I'm Mike Gempler. I'm Executive Director of the Washington Growers League in Yakima and Wenatchee, Washington. And I became involved in this project several years ago when the University of Washington first started the project and started to interface with farm workers, and particularly farm worker women down in Granger, Washington, and meet with them and get their perspective. And so it was a real learning experience for me to sit in on some of those meetings, to listen to the women, and to offer our perspective. But it was a unique approach and a very healthy approach. And so I was glad to be part of that.
Thank you. So why is it important that growers provide sexual harassment training to their employees?
Well, sexual harassment is just starting to be recognized in American society as being a problem everywhere. It's not just agriculture, although we've gotten some particular attention, but it's not just agriculture, it's Congress, it's Hollywood, it's everywhere. And of course we have our own issues with sexual harassment. We also have some unique conditions in agriculture. We have language barriers, we have isolated conditions or isolated locations. We have a number of things that are unique to our industry that we need to address. But really the bottom line is that no one should have to dread coming to work. And if you want to have a good, healthy working environment where people like working there, where people want to work for you, you have to make an environment where they feel safe and they feel appreciated, and they're not tensing up and dreading coming to work because they know they're going to be bullied and hassled. And so that's really the reason. And we have a situation now where we have record low unemployment. It's hard to attract people and to put together a complement of people for a staff, all of whom are, really, really highly qualified and responsible and good employees. And so you have to provide the best work environment you can to attract the best people and keep the best people. So being aware of sexual harassment and being aware of the concerns of employees and actually doing something about it is important to get employees, retain employees, and make a good, safe place where people like to work. And also, we've had in agriculture some very notable sexual harassment incidents and claims that have resulted in very embarrassing media coverage for the industry that has really tainted our reputation. And we don't like that. We don't want to be thought of as employers who aren't doing their job. We want to be thought of as employers who are doing a really good job providing a good place to work. And so this became very well known over the past decade in a lot of very, very broad and international news coverage. That's not what we're about. We want to feel good about ourselves. We want to feel good about our workplaces and our employees. The employers who were involved had horrible experiences. Any business that is involved in a difficult sexual harassment complaint or suits, it's a horrible experience. And so employers really do need to avoid that. It's not just about liability and money. It's about the disruption. It's about the difficulty in making it through as a company and as a team, as a group of people. And then, of course, the legal costs and fines and any legal settlements, are something that employers really want to avoid. And I think also from an employer's perspective, you know that you can't be everywhere. You can't control everything. And you might have one supervisor, one employee who engages in really unacceptable behavior, even though you've done a lot of training, even though you've set out expectations of good behavior. It's important for employers to do everything they can to build a system where they set expectations and train employees and avoid and prevent these kinds of sexual harassment situations from happening. So that's why it's important for employers to do sexual harassment training, to avoid bad situations and all the costs that go with it.
And we've talked a little bit about strategies, and what would you recommend? What are some of the best strategies in terms of providing training, sexual harassment training at the work site?
I think that it's unrealistic to think that one training is going to change the long-term behavior of some people. I've been involved in trainings where there are a group of young men typically who are using all the wrong body language and appear to be completely resistant to the message. And you know that it's going to take time. It's going to take several trainings, maybe discipline or disciplinary action in order to start getting through to them. And so the strategy, I think, is to have regular training, repeated training, to make it an expectation up front, and so that employees understand that it is an important expectation and an important part of employment policies on the farm. That this is how we treat each other, and we're not going to make any excuses, and we're not going to allow any exceptions. This is how we treat each other, and this is what is expected of you, and continually reinforce that. We do have a lot of people who are Mexican immigrants or native Spanish speakers, and so we have to use tools to make it easy for them to get this message. I think video is one very useful tool, and then backing that up with a message from management. And with sexual harassment prevention and policies to prevent it, everybody has to buy in, from the top management all the way down through the supervisors, the crew leaders, all the way down through management. If the supervisors and the crew leaders are trained in sexual harassment prevention and the top management doesn't buy into it, it's going to fail. On the other hand, if you enlighten the top management and they all buy into this, but the training and the philosophy and the commitment really doesn't filter down to the supervisors and the crew leaders, it's going to fail. The whole organization, everybody in the organization needs to be all in on this to make it work. It really needs to be a change in attitude of the organization.
Did you want to say anything about the training of supervisors, or how important it is for supervisors especially to understand this, not just this one training, but other strategies that help to diffuse some of those power dynamics within the work?
Yes, I think in general in American industry, we tend to promote people who are responsible, who show up on time, who are smart, and put them in position of supervisor with supervisory authority over others. But there's a whole set of supervisory skills that they probably have never developed, they probably never have had any training in. They were put in that position because they were responsible and smart. And we need to train the supervisors to be skilled supervisors, to give them that skill set of how to handle power, of how to communicate well with people, how to discipline people, in the appropriate way so it's effective and doesn't humiliate people or become counterproductive. How to motivate people. Those are supervisory skills. And people who are promoted because they're smart and responsible don't have them. So we need to invest in supervisors, invest in that part of our workforce. And I think in particular in agriculture, because really that is how we do it. We don't have apprenticeship programs. We don't have a lot of those job ladders that occur or exist in other industries. And so it's on us, I think, to really invest in supervisory training. It's something that the Washington Growers League is paying attention to now and trying to develop for our members.
And did you want to say anything about policy and worksite policy, how important it is for growers to make those policies clear to their employees?
Well, really, this goes back to strategy again. The setting out of expectations at the very beginning when someone is hired is critical, so that they know what's expected of them. And then they know specifics, particularly with sexual harassment prevention. They know what the specifics are about how to report, and if you're a supervisor, how to protect people who have reported, how to listen to people who have reported, and to communicate with them. The worst thing that can happen is for someone to become brave enough to actually report and then have the company never do anything or never get back to them. Because what you don't want to have is the employee saying, I know if I say anything, they aren't going to do anything about it anyways. You don't want that. You want to build trust and credibility with the workforce so that they have a trust, a belief that management is going to follow up and follow up professionally, do a fair and timely investigation, get the results back to the people who complained, protect the people who serve as witnesses, and that all of the supervisors and crew leaders know that they have to protect the people who served as witnesses and that there can't be any discrimination against them. It's a very emotional and potentially explosive situation in any workplace where there's a lot of emotions, and so you have to have strict rules about how things are going to go, and you have to enforce them, and people need to be knowledgeable about it. So you have to have a good, strong policy. You have to train your supervisory team in them every year to refresh their memories, and then let the general workforce know what the rules are. And then you have to follow through. If you never do discipline somebody for breaking the rules, you've lost your credibility. So you have to follow through. As part of the policy on a farm, you need to have multiple options for employees to report an allegation of sexual harassment. Because typically the people who are accused of sexual harassment or engaged in sexual harassment are people with some power, people, crew leaders, supervisors, and so on. So if it's an employee's frontline supervisor who's engaging in the harassment, well, obviously they're not going to report it to them. They have to have someone to go to who is able to speak their language comfortably, who is trusted. They're going to keep things confidential. They need to have more than one option, actually. So if your farm is big enough to have an HR department, or maybe it's a payroll person or someone like that, that can be a designated person to whom to report. And I think also the top management should be an option in case people want to bypass that or don't feel like they're being taken seriously. There should be multiple options.
Any other tips that you want to leave with growers?
Get started. I think all growers should just get started and at least have a basic sexual harassment policy. It really is not that complex and that time consuming. You can have a one-page sexual harassment policy that lays out how to report, who to report to, what the expectations of behavior are, how investigations are going to occur, what the philosophy of the department is, the philosophy of the farm is about having respectful treatment of each other. That's one page, and that makes all the difference in the world. And you get started with that, and if it needs to change or grow, it can change or grow. It doesn't need to be an enormous corporate handbook on sexual harassment policy, but something like that, something basic, is 1,000 times better than nothing, and trying to improvise. So just get started with something simple, and that will make all the difference.